How do you stop the largest invasion force in human history when your army is shattered, your factories are destroyed, and Hitler's panzers are 100 miles from Moscow? In October 1941, the Soviet Union faced total annihilation. 3 million German soldiers were crushing everything in their path. Soviet tank production had collapsed. Factories bombed, equipment lost, skilled workers dead. The Red Army was bleeding tanks faster than they could replace them. But in a frozen city called Chelyabinsk, deep in the Ural Mountains, something impossible was about to happen. 17-year-old Katya Volkov, a farmer's daughter who'd never seen a machine more complex than a tractor, picked up a welding torch alongside thousands of women, children, and elderly workers. They had no factory roof, no heat, no proper tools, just mountains of scrap metal, impossible quotas, and orders from Stalin himself. Build tanks or we all die. For 2 years, in temperatures dropping to 40 degrees, these civilians worked 16-hour shifts building T-34 tanks from salvaged steel, melted railroad tracks in pure desperation. They produced 18,000 tanks, more than Nazi Germany built in the entire war. If you want to know how ordinary people defeated the greatest military machine ever assembled, subscribe now. This is the story of Tankograd, the city that saved the world. Yekaterina Katya Volkov was 17 years old in the summer of 1941, living on a collective farm outside Kursk, 300 miles south of Moscow. Her world was wheat fields, milking cows at dawn, and dreams of someday becoming a teacher. She'd never been more than 20 miles from her village. Never seen a factory, never touched steel or machinery beyond the farm's ancient tractor. On June 22, 1941, everything changed. Germany invaded. Katya's father and 3 brothers were conscripted within days, sent to the front with rifles and 2 days of training. Her mother kept the farm running while listening to radio reports of German advances. Minsk fallen, Smolensk surrounded, the panzers rolling east like an unstoppable tide. By October 1941, the Germans were approaching Kursk. Soviet officials arrived at the farm with trucks and orders. Evacuate immediately. All able-bodied citizens are being relocated to industrial centers in the Urals. You have 2 hours. Katya's mother was too ill to travel. She pressed a photograph into Katya's hands, the whole family together before the war, and said, "Go, work, survive, win this war for us." Katya climbed onto a freezing cattle car with 200 other refugees. They traveled for 9 days across a country being torn apart. At every stop, they saw the same thing: bombed cities, refugees fleeing west, soldiers heading east to die. They arrived in Chelyabinsk on October 18, 1941. Katya had never seen anything like it. The city was transforming into something monstrous and magnificent. Entire factories being rebuilt from pieces evacuated from Ukraine and Western Russia. Trainloads of machinery arriving daily. Tens of thousands of workers pouring in. A factory commissar addressed the new arrivals. "Welcome to Tankograd. You are here to build T-34 tanks. We need 500 tanks per month. You will work 16-hour shifts. You will sleep in barracks. You will eat rationed food. Many of you have never worked in a factory. That doesn't matter. You will learn, or the motherland will die." Katya looked at her hands, farm hands, used to dirt and wheat, and wondered how they could possibly build a tank. She had no idea she was about to become part of the greatest industrial miracle in military history. Katya's first day at Tankograd Factory number 200 shattered every expectation. She'd imagined a proper industrial building, walls, roof, machinery arranged in orderly rows. What she found was organized chaos on an apocalyptic scale. The factory had no roof. Bombs had destroyed it during evacuation, and there was no time to rebuild. Workers operated massive lathes, presses, and welding stations under open sky. When it rained, they worked in mud. When it snowed, and it snowed constantly, they worked in blizzards. The temperature in November 1941 averaged 25 degrees 6. By December, it dropped to 40 degrees. Metal froze to bare skin instantly. Workers wore every piece of clothing they owned, but it was never enough. They assigned Katya to the welding section. Her supervisor, a grizzled metal worker named Boris who'd lost his right hand at Stalingrad and returned to build tanks, handed her a welding torch. "You ever welded before?" "No." "You're about to learn. January 15th, 1942. The factory floor went silent at 6 a.m., a silence more terrifying than any bomb. The massive furnaces that melted scrap metal into steel had stopped. No raw material, no metal, no tanks. The factory director, Comrade Zhukov, assembled all 12,000 workers in the freezing courtyard. His face was grim. "Comrades, we have a crisis. Our scrap metal reserves are exhausted. Railroad deliveries have stopped. The trains are transporting troops and ammunition to the front. Without metal, we cannot build tanks. Without tanks, our soldiers die. Moscow has given us 48 hours to solve this problem, or this factory will be shut down and you will all be reassigned to infantry units. 12,000 people facing execution by bureaucracy or execution by German bullets." Then an old woman stepped forward. Grandmother Orlova, age 72, who'd been riveting hull plates since October. She held up a gold wedding ring. "Take this, melt it. Build tanks." Within minutes, workers were emptying pockets. Wedding rings, family silver, jewelry, watches, everything metal, everything precious, thrown into collection bins. Katya stared at the photograph her mother had given her, contained in a small silver frame inherited from her grandmother, the only thing she owned from her old life. She pried the photograph free, kissed it once, and dropped the silver frame into the bin. But even with every worker's donation, they had maybe enough metal for 3 tanks. Nowhere near the 500 per month Stalin demanded. The solution came from the city itself. Party officials issued an order. Every civilian metal object in Chelyabinsk would be confiscated for the war effort. Iron fences torn down, church bells melted, statues removed, civilian vehicles stripped, kitchen pots collected door to door, citizens lined up voluntarily, bringing anything metal. A mother donated her dead son's metal. A farmer brought plowshares. Children carried tin toys. Katya watched an endless stream of ordinary people surrendering pieces of their lives, and understood. This wasn't just a factory. It was a nation refusing to die. The furnaces roared back to life on January 17th. By January 20th, they'd produced 23 tanks, built from wedding rings, church bells, and the collective sacrifice of an entire city. But Hitler's armies weren't slowing down, and Stalin's next order would push them all beyond human limits. The letter was read aloud during the morning assembly, April 12, 1942. Director Zhukov's voice cracked as he read, "To the workers of Tankograd Factory Number 200, I am Lieutenant Alexei Sokolov, commander of T-34 tank serial number 4019. Yesterday, my crew engaged 6 German Panzerabwehr's outside Kharkov. We were outnumbered, outgunned, should have died. But your tank saved us. A German shell hit our frontal armor, direct hit at 400 meters, and bounced off. The weld held. Inspector stamp inside reads, Worker K. Volkov, Weld Station 7. I don't know who you are, Comrade Volkov, but because of your work, my crew lived. 5 men went home to their families because you made that weld perfect. Thank you. We are winning because of you." 12,000 workers turned to look at Katya. She stood there, 17 years old, covered in soot and burns, tears streaming down her face. She'd welded thousands of seams, never knew if they mattered, never knew if anyone survived because of her work. Now she knew. Boris gripped her shoulder. "That's why we do this. Every weld, every rivet, every bolt, each one is a life." But the letter did something more than inspire Katya. It ignited the entire factory. If one worker's craftsmanship could save 5 soldiers, then every worker's effort mattered. Standards tightened. Speed increased, but quality didn't drop. Workers pushed harder because they finally understood. They weren't building machines. They were building shields for their brothers. Production hit 842 tanks in April, 920 in May. Then in June 1942, something extraordinary happened. A damaged T-34 was shipped back to Tankograd for major repairs. Serial number 4019, Lieutenant Sokolov's tank. It arrived on a rail car, scarred and battered, German shell impacts visible across the armor. But it was intact, functional, still deadly. Workers gathered around it like pilgrims at a shrine. Katya touched the frontal armor where her weld had held, where Sokolov's crew had survived, and felt the cold steel under her burned fingers. "This came back," she whispered. "We built it. It fought, it survived, it came home." Director Zhukov climbed onto the tank. "Comrades, this tank killed 17 German vehicles before taking damage. It will be repaired and returned to the front. This is what we do, we build. They fight, we win." The workers erupted in cheers, exhausted, starving, broken people celebrating a scarred. By August 1942, Tankograd was producing 1,047 tanks per month, exceeding Stalin's impossible quota. But the cost was staggering. 47 workers had died on the factory floor from exhaustion, accidents, or freezing. Hundreds more were permanently disabled from industrial injuries. Katya had lost 15 pounds she didn't have to lose. Her hands were so damaged from burns that she could barely feel anything anymore. But the tanks kept rolling out, day after day, week after week, each one painted with a number, loaded onto rail cars, shipped west to the front where German armies were finally, impossibly being stopped. The tide was turning. In November 1942, Soviet forces encircled the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad. The tanks that broke the German lines? Built in Tankograd. The T-34s that chased retreating panzers across frozen steppes? Welded by Katya and workers like her. In July 1943, the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history, saw 6,000 Soviet tanks face 3,000 German tanks. The Soviets won because they had more tanks, better tanks. Tanks that could be repaired and replaced faster than Germany could destroy them. Every third tank at Kursk came from Tankograd. Director Zhukov gathered the workers in October 1943 to read another letter, this time from Marshal Georgy Zhukov himself, the general commanding the counteroffensive. To the workers of Tankograd. You have built 18,000 T-34 tanks since 1941. Each tank averages 15 enemy kills before being destroyed. You have personally accounted for the destruction of 270,000 German vehicles and casualties, exceeding 1 million enemy soldiers. You are not factory workers. You are warriors. The Red Army salutes you. 18,000 tanks, built from wedding rings and church bells and melted railroad tracks. Built by teenagers and grandmothers and wounded soldiers who couldn't fight, but could still weld. Built in a factory without a roof, in 40 degrees cold, by people who chose frostbite and exhaustion over surrender. Germany's entire tank production from 1939-1945, 25,000 tanks. Soviet production from Tankograd alone, 18,000 tanks. The numbers tell the story. Hitler invaded the Soviet Union believing the Slavic people were inferior, incapable of matching German industrial might. He was catastrophically wrong. The war ended in May 1945. Katya was 20 years old, looking 40. She'd worked in Tankograd for 3.5 years without a single day off. She'd welded components